Good morning, everyone. My name is Norm D. Pasquale. I am the co-chair of Ontario Place for All. I am joined by Ontario Place for All steering committee members Bruce Van Dieten, Emmy Egulu, and Bill Greaves. Ontario Place for All is a grassroots organization that seeks to have Ontario Place follow the same great redevelopment principles that have led us to a beautifully revitalized waterfront. Today, Ontario Place for All filed an application with the Divisional Court seeking an injunction prohibiting the Government of Ontario from proceeding with its West Island redevelopment proposal until its megaspa development, including its megaspa development, until a full environmental assessment is completed. Ontario Place for All is committed to using all possible avenues to hold the provincial government accountable for their actions at Ontario Place, and ensuring that they follow the proper process, which would involve public consultation on the West Island redevelopment. This filing is one of those avenues. We just want the Ontario government to follow its own laws. Ontario Place for All is asking the court to order that the province conduct a full environmental assessment of the entire project, which the government has up to this point refused to do. The respondents, including the Ministry of Infrastructure, Infrastructure Ontario, the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport, intend to redevelop the West Island of Ontario Place, which involves, in part, building a massive glass megaspa. In doing so, they intend to destroy the West Island of Ontario Place by cutting down 840 trees, leveling the historic heritage landscape, and filling in portions of the lakefront. They intend to complete the development of West Island without submitting those activities to an environmental assessment that is being conducted respecting other parts of Ontario Place, based on the false assertion that it is a private undertaking, not a public undertaking. In making this assertion, however, they are keeping the secret contractual agreements that would disclose this project's true nature. Make no mistake, this is a government-led project. From the development application to the site servicing to managing the public realm on West Island for 95 years, the government is all over this project and does not meet the definition of a privately led project. None of this should be permitted. Infrastructure Ontario should be required to produce the documents disclosing the true nature of the project, permit the court to judicially review the decision, and require the environmental assessment to take place. Infrastructure Ontario should be prevented from destroying Ontario Place West Island in the meantime. Now I'll pass the floor to Emmy Egulu, Ontario Place for All Steering Committee member, to provide more detail.
Good morning. Our legal action is a bold statement against the irreversible harm posed by the proposed redevelopment. Ontario Place belongs to the people, and any change to its landscape must be fully understood and agreed upon by those it serves, the community of Ontario. Ontario Place for All and its tens of thousands of supporters from across the province demand that the government halt its demolition activities to ensure that the environmental impact of this proposal can be fully understood by the people of Ontario. Our court order seeks, 1, a judicial review of the decision of the respondents to not include the redevelopment of Ontario Place's West Island in the Category C Public Work Class Environmental Assessment of the Ontario Place redevelopment pursuant to the Environmental Assessment Act. 2, an order requiring the respondents to produce the lease and any other contractual agreements with Therm, along with any business case for the spa on the West Island redevelopment. 3, if necessary, leave to bring an emergency injunction. 4, an order requiring the respondents to conduct a Category C environmental assessment of the entire Ontario Place redevelopment project. 5, an injunction prohibiting the respondents from destroying, cutting, damaging, or otherwise taking, directing, or enabling any action resulting in any harm to any trees located on Ontario Place's West Island and or otherwise harming or interfering with the landscape of the West Island, or directing or permitting any other person to do so until such time as a Category C environmental assessment of the entire Ontario Place redevelopment project that includes the redevelopment of Ontario Place's West Island is completed. Thank you. I'll now be passing it on to Bill Greaves, another member of Ontario Place for All.
Thank you. So today we are asking the provincial government to follow their own rules. I'd like to provide a little bit of context about other ways in which the government is not following their own rules, and you can find this in our application. And that is, in addition to not properly conducting an environmental assessment, the government is also running roughshod over its requirements under the Ontario Heritage Act in the ways they are required to treat this property of international heritage significance. By the way, Ontario Place has been recognized by the Cultural Landscape Foundation, by the World Monuments Fund, as a site of heritage importance. It is a site of global heritage importance. The province has recognized Ontario Place as a heritage site of provincial significance. That is the highest level of designation for a heritage site in Ontario, and that level of designation comes with rules. One of those rules is that the government must, before making any decisions about this site, prepare a strategic conservation plan about the entire site that is then a foundational document that guides all decisions. However, the government arranged this entire project with Therme before completing a strategic conservation plan, and then generated one that back-justified that decision by excluding it from the purview of the strategic conservation plan. Another rule that comes with a heritage site that is designated at this level under the Ontario Heritage Act is that demolition must be the last resort. Cutting down 850 trees is demolition. This project needs to stop, and the government needs to recalibrate and follow its own procedures. I want to pass it back now to Norm for any questions.
Thank you. I'd like to open up the floor if the press have any questions at this point.
Have you got I missed the top of it, so apologies if you covered some of this, but are there precedents or other examples of where people have been able to force the government with the courts to go back and do an environmental assessment when it's used its powers to get out of doing it?
Yeah, so I can point you to the attempted demolition of the foundry, where the government was offside on their heritage laws, and the government actually had to stop that demolition work, and actually listen to concerned Ontarians.
That's one example, yeah. But the heritage angle too. Are there cases where courts have been able to tell the government to go back and do something that some procedures it seems to have papered over?
Yeah, in fact, I believe in the case of the foundry, they were offside on the Heritage Impact Assessment Act, but I don't know if Bill Greaves might be able to add some more context there, perhaps?
No, I think you're right.
Yeah, I would say that's the test case, extremely recent.
So you guys are looking to the court to also release the contract. Is that correct? Can you tell us why? What are you looking for in that? Why would that be of public interest?
Yeah, so it at least can help us to understand. Like we have brought forth FOIs to understand what are the animals at risk, what are the birds at risk, what are the details of the contract. Like this will help us to get some fulsome picture about what an environmental assessment would entail. Like there's just a lot of secrets that we think would be relevant to this issue within that secret lease.
What is your understanding on when these trees on the West Island are set to be cut down?
I did see an article the other day, I think in the Star, that specified the West Island trees likely are coming down, if probably early next year. Looks like it's their schedule, but they've been extremely opaque with the tree cutting schedule.
So are you likely to get an injunction then now, given that that's still a ways away?
I mean, this was one source out of the government. I'm not even positive it's reliable. We haven't been able to get any sort of information, and I don't know that any elected leaders at Toronto have been able to get any sort of information on their construction schedule, like those specifics. So, if basically we're bringing this injunction, and should we need it later, we'll bring an emergency injunction if they start moving on cutting down those heritage trees.
And to fund this, you've got donations. People have been supporters have been donating money. Is that where the?
Yeah, we're working with Polaire Roland. We're very grateful for their help and their services in this matter. We are working alongside them in partnership.
Are they pro bono, or are you having to cough up some money to get this going?
Yeah, there's a bit of a mix there. Yeah.
So can you give us a sense? So you guys just filed this today. What's that process, the court process?
Yeah, it likely is going to take some time to be heard by the court, so that's why we are seeking leave for an emergency injunction if it's necessary. But, once the court hears it, we would hope that they would grant us an injunction, I think, based on really reasonable grounds that we've laid out here, so that they don't destroy anything on West Island, because a complete demolition of everything on West Island is what's, planned. So we hope that they will hear this quickly, grant us that injunction, and then hear the merits of the case.
Have you been given a sense of timeline, how long it might take?
Not as of yet. It will travel at the speed of the court.
Just to clarify, is there a possibility you're looking for a delay to is there? My understanding, and I'm not a lawyer, is that the government on land it owns pretty much has a free hand, and if it wants to build a spa there, it's going to be able to build a spa there. Is there anything you've been able to find legal arguments that might actually stop, not just delay the project for more constantly, but to actually stop the thing?
Yeah, so we think an environmental assessment of the complete demolition of all of the heritage components of West Island, I don't see how that's going to pass, a proper Class C environmental assessment. But at least we want the government to follow their own laws here, actually do a Class C environmental assessment, consult Ontarians about the clear cutting of everything that matters at West Island, and actually consider alternatives as part of this. Which an environmental assessment asks you to do. So we don't believe this is a privately led project. We believe this is a government-led project completely. They're running the development application. They're running the site servicing. They have told us they'll be managing the public realm on West Island for the duration of this contract. This is a government-led project.
Have you guys spoken any recently, to Mayor Chow or anyone at City Hall?
We remain in communication, with Deputy Mayor Malik, whose file this is, and we certainly are talking to elected officials at City Hall.
You guys have tried a lot of different strategies and tactics, and it seems like the province is just kind of moving ahead with their plans. Is this kind of a last-ditch effort to try to find some innovative way to get them to stop the construction on Ontario Place?
It was interesting. We put forth an impact assessment request to the federal government, and then the province actually applied to federal court to try to block our impact assessment request. So it seems like some of the things that we are doing to try to get this project back on track and have the government follow their own rules are working. And this is another step in that. Public pressure I think is extremely important. Need everybody to go to OntarioPlaceForAll.com and take action, reach out to their MPPs. But, action in the court is another option, advocating to the government. These are all important steps to stand up for our public space.
But ultimately, though, none of it has worked because the government is kind of going forward with this. So at what point do you feel like you don't feel like the fight has been lost yet?
No, it's interesting to see the government take that preemptive step on the impact assessment. Does that mean that they see some risk there, that the project is going to be held up? I think that some of the moves that we are taking are landing and, causing hopefully a sober second look at what they plan to do to West Island.
Is there anything left, though, if this doesn't work?
There's always more steps. Advocacy, people power, speaking to your elected representatives, always extremely important. I think that's the most important piece of our sort of defense for Ontario Place. We need people to talk to their elected Ontario representatives and tell them what a special place this is and how it's worth preserving, how it's worth making into a 21st century public space. People power is the most important power here.
You mentioned the business case. There's a lot of talk about a business case for the Science Center. Is that part of what you'd be seeking in this?
We're asking narrowly for the 95-year lease specific to Ontario Place, not necessarily for the business case for Ontario Science Centre. But we would love to see that because Minister Surma said at some point that would be released, and she made it sound like it was coming sort of soon, and it's yet to appear. So demolishing the diminishing of the Science Centre, we would all love to see that business case.
Thanks.
Thank you. I don't know if there's anybody on the phone, but thank you all very much for coming today.